Morning all, welcome back to the channel. Today is the 23rd of February 2025 and I thought it'd be a good day for a bit of a garden tour since the weather's breaking nicely at the moment. Got the sun in my eyes right now, as you can see, and I want to sort of document for myself as well where the garden stands right now, because last time I was out here with you it was late December. I still had some residual plant material in the ground that was that got popped by the cold and just didn't make it out. I still had some weeds to clear through. The bed spaces weren't that defined, and I wanted to show both you and myself the progress. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from there as far as when things start getting in the ground, but it's coming. We just had 3 nights in the high teens, low 20s, and it looks in the 15-day forecast like the worst of it's behind us. We had a ridiculous amount of rain for about a week, starting 10 days ago, and then a couple days of snow. So the ground's nice and saturated. I think things are really ready to wake up now. So let's take the tour. First thing I want to show is this 4th compost bay. This is a bin that had a pile that I pulled from over in this direction, and it was a blend of wood chip and cut grass clippings. And the reason I created the pile was because I cut the back field, I had the grass clippings, and I didn't really have any way to use them at the moment in the garden. And I always have standing wood chip piles. And I said, well, heck, take some welded wire, create a ring, and do a lasagna pile of wood chip, grass clipping, wood chip, grass clipping. And I did that. It was about 4 feet high by about a diameter of 4 feet. And I don't think there was enough green material in there, because I turned it a couple of times. It wound up in this bay here, and its decay was okay but not great, and it didn't get warm after I was turning it each time. So I think it probably ran out of nitrogen, and I don't have any more material to add to it. So I started actually pulling this and using it in the garden now around my perennials, my berry bushes. So you'll see that. So I want to start the tour there just to show you where I'm making this the progress in this compost system. And the other reason I wanted to get it out of here was because I really want to start getting the bin flow from left to right. I've got, this is fairly well aged at this point. It could stand another couple of turns. Same with the material over on this bin. But for this to work, that bin has to get cleared out. And then once I get these moved down, I can start pulling from the staging area. And you can see this, I've actually filled up with leaves and food scraps from inside over and over and over again. And it's continued to drop down despite the fact that it doesn't have a whole lot of nitrogen in there. Between the weight of the rain, the weight of the snow, it's depressed quite a bit, and I'm really ready to get it into the system. So we're going to take a trip and walk around the interior of the garden now. I'm actually really thrilled with how things are looking in here, because if I had plugs to go today, which the only ones I do have some onions I could probably put out, but I still want the weather to break a bit more. So I'm thinking maybe early mid-March for things to actually start going out. Most likely late March, early April for the better part of the spring crops. But right now, if I actually had plugs and good weather, the soil's in really good shape and ready to take it. So I've got my strawberry beds. Now, interestingly enough, I finished weeding a lot of these right before the rain started, about 2 weeks ago. And right before the snow, 3 days ago, I was going through the beds again, and one of these plants, I saw a tiny little white flower. And I thought to myself, well, that's probably not going to yield, that's probably going to die in the cold. But it tells me that we're probably only a couple weeks away from seeing quite a bit of flowering in this now. So the strawberry beds, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 established beds on the southern side of this garden area, right through this one here. That's a residual string that I put up just to guide the 3rd row. Each of these beds, for the most part, is about 2.5, 3 feet wide with 3 rows. The plants are probably about anywhere between 8 to 12 inches off each other. It's pretty dense, but I did it last year and it seemed to work out really well. So I'm happy enough with the production. One day I'd like to dial it in a bit more and figure out if I can get better yields with fewer plants, better spaced. But I haven't put the effort into figuring out. I haven't. What I'll need to do is actually have a couple of beds side by side, and then do some berry weights at that point and just see what yields better. I'm not that ambitious at this point, so I haven't gone down that path. But in the future, I could see that being a little bit of a task that I could enjoy. Now, this area here, last time we came out, this was basically my residual strawberry plant inventory bed. So all of these beds were already established, but what I was thinking about doing was breaking all of these out and then resetting these beds as strawberries. I also wanted to keep them to when I broke the beds down, if I had holes in the strawberry beds, I could plug them. I decided to go ahead and just scrap these beds because when I started looking at all the one that I wanted to plant in the spring and summer, I was starting to run out of room because I had so many beds committed to strawberries, and I wanted this space for something else. Now, the strawberry bed strategy is going to be different this coming year than it's been in the past. In the past, I've always just let my strawberry beds just run, and then I clear them all at the end and reset them. That takes a lot of time in the fall, and the amount of strawberry plants that are going into the scrap pile in the fall is really high. What I think I'm going to do this year is, at the end of the growing season for strawberries, which for me is about late June, I'm going to scrap all of but 2 beds and get those beds back into production, and the 2 remaining strawberry beds, I'm going to let them run wild. And then when it comes time to replant strawberries in late October, all I have to do is clear those 2 beds worth of areas, and that should produce enough plants to cover 15 to 20 beds of strawberries, which should be available coming out of the growing season in late October. And that way I don't have to try to clear out 15 or 20 beds at the same time at the end of October in a scramble. I've got another bed of strawberries here, and the gap is because before I decided to clear this one off, I had this bed cleared, and I decided to, on a random day, just put strawberry plants in here. I don't know why I did it, but it gave me another bed of strawberries, but it does kind of break up the flow a little bit, but still roots in the ground, so I'm not going to complain about that. At the end of the fall, this was a snow pea bed, and I left them in here and I just mowed that out. So when they died off, I mowed it probably about a month ago. I think these were legitimately still in the ground last time I showed, but not actually mowed in. I'll probably still rake this out a bit when it comes time to plant. I just it was just a task on the list, and I wanted that material to start breaking down into the soil. This bed was daikon radish at the end of last year, and I will probably go ahead and rake that residual organic matter out. I say the organic matter, it's undecomposed grass clippings from prior year, or I may just take my hand and zhuzh it along the surface just to break it up a little bit, because it's a little clumpy and a little sticky. I say sticky, it's kind of stuck together in a thin layer, so I might just break it up and resprinkle it a bit just so it breaks down a little faster. This is my established onion bed, Red Weatherfield. I've probably got about 80 onions in there. I didn't get as great a transplant success ratio as I wanted, but again, 80 onions for me will last a couple of months, so I could be really happy with that. I just need to build a system for curing them so they last a bit longer than they did last year. But I'm happy with the way they look right now, and I just weeded that bed yesterday. This is my asparagus bed. You can see if I get close, there is one of the crowns right there. I just cut them back about 2 weeks ago when they really looked like they were pretty much died off from the prior year. I'm still not going to eat asparagus this year because this was seed sown back in February of 24. So I'm probably looking March of 2027, I'll probably be able to start harvesting spears. The plant should be really, really strong by that point. And then what may be my favorite part of the garden, my blackberries. I love the way this section turned out. And this is actually the area you can see the mulch. That's what came from Bay 4 of the compost. The mulch was, prior to that, grass clippings that I had that was laid down. But I thought to myself, hey, you know what? These grass clippings aren't going to really break down at any rate when they keep getting sun exposure and they keep drying out. So why not just, I wanted to use that compost for something. So I mulched over the grass clippings. It's just more diverse organic matter to break down. And it looks really good. I love when I remulch a bed, the color just always looks so sharp. And if we go around the back, you can see I've got probably another 9-10 plants right along the edge. Some of these have established very well, some are new. This right here, this plant was nothing more last year than a sucker that popped out of the ground. Actually, that's what all of these are. I just pulled them out, and instead of potting them on, I just stuck them into the soil next to the fence, mulched them over, and said good luck. And really, for the most part, they took pretty well. Even this little guy here, he's got a small root on him. I dug him up for kicks and giggles about a month ago to see if he actually took it all, because he never looked like he was doing anything when I put him in the ground late last year. Lo and behold, he's got legitimately new roots. So I hope I didn't disturb him too much. He gave me a bit of a dirty look when I took him out of the ground, but it was more, I had to check. And yeah, I think in 2 years, we're gonna have a nice little plant there. And I know that because this beast here is the same way 2 years ago. So I think I just stuck him at the in the fall of 2023, and this is what he looks like now. Again, came out of the root system from one of these. I don't know which one because the roots are running out of here, so I couldn't tell you what varieties these are. I can tell you what most of these are, but this is just a random from a root here that just popped up, and this is what it does. And what I'll do for these guys is, instead of letting them go really more full size, I'm going to keep them nice and dwarf. I'll probably allow everything on the fence to go with no more than 2 floricanes. I'll let them go about 2.5 feet tall. I'll top them at that point, and then I'm going to go ahead and, as they're shooting off their side branches, I'll pop them off at around the 2 foot mark to really keep them nice and compacted. And I'm also curious to know if the cane sizes and the side shoot sizes really thicken up, because they'll be pushing they're not going to have the apical dominance on those side shoots. So will they actually throw much bigger berries being on a much smaller plant at that point with what I hope is a really thick cane? That should be a fun experiment. Last time I came out, and I showed this in another video, you can see on the outside of the fence, I went and I pulled all that Bermuda grass, and you can see that's all the Bermuda grass that I just picked up, threw to the side, raked into a big row. And all in there are onion seeds now. I'm waiting for them to germinate, and I think I could probably get about 700 or 800 onions. I made 80 feet down. It's a 90-foot fence. The last 10 feet, I got kind of tired, and I didn't know if I was gonna have enough seed for, so I just kind of punted on that. I actually randomly stuck a fig cutting into the about halfway down that last 10-foot section, just in the middle, because it had a tiny little root on it. I found it off of a plant in the up in that area on the north side of the berm, where I have one big fig tree. I had 2 smaller ones that didn't really take. One I pulled out of the ground because I wanted to retransplant somewhere, and when I was snipping some of the extra cuttings off of him, one had a tiny little root, and I wanted to see if it would actually grow, so I just stuck it right into the ground. I got my 5 blueberries here. I remulched them as well. Some of these are doing better than others. I love some of the new growth I have on this one, for example. And this one, for example, did really, really well. This little guy here is pink lemonade, and this one really hasn't performed yet as far as established and grown, and neither has powder blue. But the other 3 are doing well. So the other 3 I may actually let 1, 2, and 3. I may let them throw some flowers and fruit this year. Probably not all, because I still want to redirect some of that energy to the root system. I don't know how old these were when I bought them. They may have been 1 or 2 year old plants. They were in 1-gallon pots, and I installed them back in, when was that? I think February or March of 2023. and I stripped all the flowers that popped then. I stripped last year's as well because I still didn't love all the size of the plant at that point. But now we're coming into my second, they finished 2 years fully in the ground here. So I may let a few berries go, but I still think I'm gonna strip most of the flowers off this year and see if I really get a much stronger root system going so the shoot system really can follow suit afterwards. I've still got my one little raised bed experiment there with some mixed material on top. What I think I'm gonna do on that, I may actually, to assist that in breaking down faster, I may take a thin layer of finished compost and put it right along the top, on top of the organic matter, and hopefully that'll add a little bit of biology to help it break down from the top as the biology from the bottom kind of works it bottom up and top down. Maybe that middle section of organic matter will break down a little faster. But again, I think long term that's going to be a bed that I'm going to use for longer tap-rooted carrots and parsnips, because I will do carrots out in some of these beds, and I use Danvers 126, which works pretty well in clay soils. But again, this is amazing soil that I'm building here right up until about the 4-inch mark, and then it very quickly winds up turning into that really thick, red, sandy, sticky clay that you really just can't work through easily. So no carrot that's supposed to tap 12 inches is going to do anything in here. But in that one, it could. So I've got another, gosh, 2, 4, 6, 7 strawberry beds right up in this row. And I think, like I said before, when it's time for the strawberries to come out at the end of June, all these beds are going to be gone. I think what I'll probably do is have those first 2 beds over there in the corner, let them run crazy, just because they'll be contained against the fence. I won't need to have them encroaching on too many areas of the garden, and all of this and all of the rest of these can go, and I can have all that area for other plantings. I've got a couple of cleared beds here. I'm probably going to do some spring greens in those, because I do have some mustard and kale and braising mixed greens that are in the in my shed that have germinated. They're slow to grow right now because the temperatures aren't good for them, but they have popped, and I'll have to go ahead and separate some of them out because I have multiple seedlings in each cell pack. And I've done that before, and they'll recover just fine, and I can get probably 2 or 3 beds of greens out of that. And then my first garlic bed. This was my experimental bed when I was planting. I mentioned in the last video, last time I did a garden tour, that my garlic didn't come out of the ground very clean in 2024. So by the time it was going in, it wasn't as healthy as I wanted to be as far as seed garlic goes, but it's all I had on hand. I wanted to put it into this bed first. It was about 2 weeks before I usually would plant my garlic, but I wanted to see if it would actually germinate at all, and it did. So that's how I wound up with my other 4. And it's just gamble at this point. If they don't come out of the ground healthy, that basically means I'm starting my garlic from scratch again, which will break my heart. And then I've got these 4 beds here I have cleared and raked out, so they are ready to go for plants. I don't think I'll be adding any more compost to them this year. I do all of my own seed starting in a sifted homemade compost, and so basically when I transplant, I'm amending the soil technically by adding that 4 square inches of compost when I put the plants in. And I do mulch throughout the season as well. If for some reason I get a grass cutting from the back pasture that I don't have anything to do with, if it's easy for me to mulch around the plants, I'll bring that right in and just start laying a thin layer of grass clippings straight around the base around the plants. And I have not had an issue in doing that in adding much weed pressure. My broader concern is not necessarily the introduction of weed seeds, it's not feeding my soil. So if I add a few weed seeds, that's a small price to pay to build good soil, in my personal context and experience. Coming to the north side of the garden, I've got another strawberry bed here. This one got installed, I think I mentioned this before, because when I installed all of the other ones, I wasn't thrilled at the moment with how quickly the plants were taking. And as I started losing a couple, I had plenty of inventory to replace them with, but I wanted an insurance bed just to make sure that I had extra plants ready to fruit this spring. So it was kind of a paranoid thing where I'm like, I'm not gonna have enough strawberries. And well, clearly I do, but now I have even more. So I kind of operate under the mindset that more is much, much better than less when it comes to food. If I have to eat, an extra 3 pints of berries a day, I'll get over it. That's fine by me. I raked this area out the other day just to kind of set where the next... I'll probably have 2 beds in this area. Kind of lost the pathway, but when you're talking about this being nothing more than organic matter, the whole thing's basically a bed. So for me to lose the pathway and have to reset the bed is no work for me. Not sure what's going to go in here yet, but I'm thinking it may be... I may have a massive beet bed there. I don't know why, but I'm just kind of seeing that. 4 beds of garlic. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we are actually only about, 2 months away from garlic scapes. I think it was around late April, early May that the scapes were thrown. I have 2 hardneck varieties here that are all interplanted, so I don't know what's what. It's German white and red Romanian, or Romanian red. And yeah, I think I'd have to look back at my log from last year, but I think it was late April. For about a week and a half, I harvested scapes pretty much every day. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then I've got all these empty beds over in this direction. I mean, you can just look at them and they're saying, hey, put some roots in us. And I'm like, I would, I just don't have anything available for you at the moment. Coming around somewhere in this section here, I do have to weed that, but I don't want to do that yet because this was kind of a bed at the back half of maybe the early fall of last year, mid-fall, and I direct sowed onions in there. And they germinated slow because the temperatures weren't great, and I was hoping they would overwinter, and then all of a sudden winter hits, and they stall, and the weeds started creeping in a little bit, but then I couldn't really see the onions anymore. So as opposed to weeding that right now and disturbing the onions in case they decide they're going to really step up this spring once it really sets in, I thought I would just let this area go, and then when things are starting to take off, I'll be able to differentiate if the onions are even popping up, and then I can start pulling the weeds if I need to pull them. And if the onions don't pop up, I weed it, and it's going to be just a something else bed instead. This is just an empty bed with grass clippings from last year set on top. Looks like I need to go through and weed that a little bit. Yeah. This bed, I do need to get some weeds pulled out of here. And this was my second asparagus bed. It's from the same asparagus seed starting that I did that you saw in that bed over there. These came from the same stock, but they went into the ground much later because I didn't have an available bed for all of my seedlings. So these went in late and they never really established the way the other guys did. So I didn't even bother cutting these back this year. I probably should come through with a scissors and just snip the tops off, pull some weeds out of there, and see how well those crowns can establish this year. If they really don't do much, just because of my transplant timing, maybe they stayed in the cell pack too long, I might just pull them and call this bed something else. My raspberries, again, my experiment on those, I say my experiment, they've been in the ground for a few years and I haven't gotten a flower or fruit yet, but you can see that it's all from 2 bare roots that I got. And you can see the extent of growth that I have around the base of the plant. So the variety is supposed to be Heritage. And when I look online, Heritage is supposed to be a primocane fruiting raspberry in the fall. So September of last year, I need to track my canes better. September of last year, everything here in September of last year was a primocane, and I got no fruit. So this year it's a floricane. I guess technically if it were going to fruit, it would probably be June of this year. These should be fruiting as the new canes are starting to pop out of the ground. If I get no fruit off these plants are coming out, because I'm not going to sit here and keep fighting this every year to get no fruit and constantly just, retrim out my canes, try to figure out what's what, just to not actually get any food out of it. So it's been fun to deal with it, but it's been frustrating not to be able to eat from it. I've got 3 aronia shrubs, 1, 2, 3. I haven't eaten anything off of them yet. I have seen some fruit in the prior years, but it comes so late in the season that I'm kind of neglecting this corner. I do need to get back here and get some of the residual Bermuda grass out of this area. The Bermuda grass is pretty intertwined with the root system of the plant, so I don't know if ever how clean I'll be able to get this. But it's not the highest priority food that I have out here. It's a pretty plant when it's leafing out, and the fruit is pretty to look at. I'm sure the birds are getting to it, so something's gonna get it. And it does diversify the root system that I have in the garden, so I'm happy for the contrast it adds in visual appeal and the fact that I'm getting, a different root in here. But I wouldn't mind actually getting a berry out of there at some point this December. And then I've got my elderberries. I've got Bob Gordon and Wildwood, and you can see both of them are starting to leaf out. Wildwood is definitely further ahead. And I did mulch around this. I did a pretty good job of weeding the base of him with the Bermuda grass. I don't think there's that much residual in there, but you can see that I am dealing with some Bermuda grass on this guy's base, and it is entangled in the root system. So yeah, that's not gonna be much fun to deal with. Coming to the end of the tour, we've got I don't know why I love this section so much. It's probably because this was supposed to be nothing more than a pathway between the edge of the bed and the fence. And I looked at this area and I'm like, gosh, that's like 6 feet of space there. And I pulled a ton of blackberry suckers from that area over there. And I put them in pots. They started to root, and I said, I gotta do something with these. So I created a bed, 16 plants. And like I said before, the ones against the fence over on the western side, the way I talked about having 2 canes, topping them short, shortening the side branches, I'm gonna do that with this as well, so I don't have to deal with the trellising system. But how pretty is that gonna be? I mean, 2 feet tall, just a huge shrub row of blackberries. That's gonna be incredible. I'm excited for this one, because this I just installed late last year, and I can just see the potential of how neat this is gonna look. Plus, I really like the idea of maximizing my space in the garden so that I can produce as much food in a small space as possible. And I know blackberries, berries are a really important crop to me to grow a lot of, and it's a crop for me that needs to be in the garden fence because it will get popped by deer and squirrels. And I think, I just love propagating these woody shrubs. They're just so much fun. And then in between a few of these guys, I've got some garlic because I had some extra that didn't fit in the beds when I was first installing them. And I'm like, where can these cloves go? And I'm like, oh yeah, right behind me. I've got space in between my blackberries. They'll come out by the time the roots take over from the blackberries. So yeah, maximizing space, maximizing food. And that, my friends, is the garden tour for February. I think I'll come back out in late March again to show another tour, because I'm thinking by the 3rd week of every month, starting pretty much right now, we should be seeing a pretty heavy month-to-month transition. And I feel like towards the end of each month is a pretty good time to get out and show what's going on. So I hope you enjoyed this time we spent together, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for watching.